Hello and welcome to the Best Today podcast. I am your host, Shantae Grant. And today, just like last week, I'm back with another listener question. Thank you all for sending these fantastic questions. In today's question, I had to sit with and think about a little bit, and I'll tell you why in just a second. The question was, how do you avoid becoming complacent or even notice when you have become complacent? And I always look at the question and I kind of sit and think and start kind of just writing some of the things that come to mind. Here, of course, you know, I love to define a word so we can all be on the same page. And so I started, and this is what got me thinking about the word complacent and what it meant. And I looked up different definitions and I wasn't fully satisfied with the definitions, which is funny because some of the definitions are mainly saying being satisfied. And so I took to the Best Today community and I sat and thought about my definition and started writing out how I would look at complacency to make sure we're all talking about the same exact thing. And I'm going to share two responses that I got from the Best Today community, which were fantastic. So let's start there with, if we're talking about how to avoid being complacent, let's talk about what that means and why don't we want to be there and how do we notice what it is. And so mainly what I found when I looked up the word complacent was, being comfortable, being unconcerned about shortcomings or where there are rooms for further growth, being okay with blind spots or inadequacies, comfort or satisfaction. And a comfort is a satisfaction, but not because things are going great, but because you are either ignoring willfully or unintentionally things that could be happening that are to your detriment. That's kind of the sense of what everything I found in looking at the word had to say. And as I was thinking about that, I thought to myself, I would say that complacency is an unhealthy form of contentment. Because here's the thing, contentment is a good thing. I believe contentment is a necessary thing. There's a duality in contentment, right? There's a nuance because contentment says, I am content with what is while also striving for what could be. I always refer to it because I've talked about contentment for years as seeking and soaring. Being both hungry and full. I'm not the one to credit for the hungry and full. Paul is. But being both hungry and full, right? Which is, I'm full. I am satisfied with what I have. So in that respect, I am full. I am so grateful, right? I'm grounded in where I am. But at the same time, I'm hungry because I know that there's more for me to do and fulfill all the potential that I have, that I've been given. That's contentment in a nutshell. But I look at complacency as an unhealthy, which is funny because I never thought about healthy versus unhealthy contentment. But when I started thinking about complacency, I really do see it as an unhealthy form of contentment. And here's why. Audrey from the Best Today community, who is a teacher, and I'm going to tell you, just shout out, hand clap for all the teachers out there. If you are listening to this and you are a teacher anywhere, any grade, I thank you. I salute you. I tip my hat to you, particularly those of you who work with the little people, kindergarten through 12 in particular. I consider all of them the little people. God bless you. I tip my hat to you. Okay. But two of our teachers we have multiple teachers in the community, a lot of fantastic teachers. But two of those responded. Audrey first, who wrote, complacency or being complacent is someone who is content with doing what they've always done because it's comforting. Alternatively, someone who resigns themselves into repeating the same patterns, even if they're ineffectual or harmful because they're afraid to do anything different. Complacent people are complicit in their demise. So again, we're not getting the fuzzies with this complacency, right? And then Stacy, shout out to Stacy, another of our fantastic Best Today community members, came in and said, I would add to Audrey's definition that complacency is where you think things are going better than they actually are in reality, and being unaware of how damaging the repeated actions or lack thereof are to our physical, emotional, and mental health is the opposite of self-awareness. And what I wanted to say when I read these, I did in the community, I was like, y'all in my business. Y'all are all in my lemonade because we're going to talk about that level of contentment and the self-awareness. They hit two of the key components when I sat and thought about complacency, because maybe you are complacent about some things, but not others. And so I hope this episode will hold a mirror to you to do some self evaluation, right? So I'm going to take the question in reverse. The second part of the question was, how do you notice when you have become complacent? And I'm going to start there before we get to the first part of the question is, how do you avoid it? First, how do you notice when you're even there? And one of my goals in my work here on the podcast, everything and everywhere that I do anything, whether it's Best Today, corporate training, anywhere, at the core of what I'm trying to help you do is to become more self-aware. It's why I created Life Class, my course in self-discovery, which is free to all Best Today community members. Self-awareness and exercising your self-awareness muscles by incorporating it into your daily life is the first thing I want to encourage you to do if you're trying to figure out, how do I notice when I've become complacent? Because here's the thing, I need you to notice when you've become other things too, because there are probably other things that happened before you got to complacent, but you skipped those for lack of self-awareness, and then we got all the way down to complacent. Right? There were warning and red flags before we got to complacent. And that's why self-awareness is so important to catch us before we even get there. And so what are some things that might help? The Best Today Guide morning practice. Answering those questions every morning, taking 2 to 3 minutes to reflect on how you are today, which also can be done in the Anytime Today journal, which I'll link in the show notes. That's our journal with the prompts that you can use at any time and any day. Today I am, today I need, today I feel, today I want. But taking time, a moment, anytime in your day, night, afternoon, to check in with yourself, to get clear on where you are, what's coming up. I think a daily practice of being connected to yourself is really important. In the Best Today Guide, that's the 14 weeks checking in and on what matters and seeing how your days, your weeks, and months are moving you toward what you say matters or maintaining it, right? Or you can look and see, am I at a standstill? Am I regressing? But it's the required constant checking in on a quarterly basis, a weekly basis, a daily basis. And this isn't taking hours at end. We're talking about the more you do this, the shorter time frame you usually need. But you notice by having an active awareness of self, not hyper-focus, right? There's a difference. This isn't a critical view where you feel you're constantly always working on something or nitpicking at yourself from some negative or harsh point of view. It's just an honest look at the person who you spend the most time with, which is yourself, right? So if you were to go back, for instance, to episode 184, 2 episodes back, I talk about how to write a personal mission statement. That's like a starting point, you know? Have you defined what matters to you? What's important to you? Because if you know what that is, right? And even sometimes we have to evaluate that for some complacency. But the clearer you are, I always start back at what I call the big picture or at the top. So many people want to think about themselves as like, okay, I'm gonna think about today, this week, this month, this quarter. Yay, and that's great. But if you're not thinking from it from a place of already having a clear understanding of like the bigger picture of your life, of this season, then you're a lot of times going to miss the mark and you're not actually steering your boat towards something. You're just out here in the ocean moving around. And I want you to be intentional about your days, your life, because we don't know how many we get. So I want you to be intentional about them and with them. And part of that comes through this practice of self-awareness and understanding what it is you actually want and what matters. And understanding yourself, because also I think it's important to understand, are you making the level of contribution to the places, people, places, and spaces that matter to you that match what has been given in you to give, right? Your potential, some might call it. And so some questions I would say I might think about if I were you is, am I surrounded by people who encourage me and challenge me in a way that pushes me forward and holds me accountable? Are there people who are free to be honest with me about complacency if they see it in me? Do I have relationships where I would even allow someone to notice that? Do I have spaces where I show up fully as myself as I am, or am I walking around with a mask? So it's hard for people to see what's really going on. Am I aware of what matters to me and whether I'm living my life in accordance with my potential and values, or am I coasting in comfort because the effort to do things differently is just more than I have to give? And so I love what Stacy wrote, where she says, you think things are going better than they are. You're unaware of the pattern, the damaging that's being done. And that's why it takes kind of stepping out and really assessing and looking at self. Kind of liking it to, I don't know if it's a full analogy, but this morning, my daughter's alarm went off. She's downstairs eating breakfast. I don't know why it had gone off again. She's eating breakfast and it's not bothering her. And everyone else is like, Zoe, please go turn off your alarm. And she's like, well, actually, if you just ignore it, it's like it's not even going off. I'm fine. If it's bothering anyone else, they can go turn it off. And we're like, no, it's your alarm. So essentially her position is, I'm aware that this thing is happening, but that I could stop and change and make things better and less noisy and loud. But instead, what I'm going to do is ignore it and continue to move on as though it's not ringing. And if I do that long enough, and in fact, to me, would not be ringing. But the reality is it is still ringing, right? A lot of people you've ignored the red flags, or the opportunities that are calling you to do or be all that you have to be or take the next step, but you have blocked out that ringing alarm so much that you actually don't even hear it anymore. That it can be a form of complacency. And so let's go to this. The first part of that question is, how do you notice when you've become complacent? Not how do you know you come. The second part was, how do I avoid becoming complacent? We've talked a little bit about it. The first part of that, I believe, is self-awareness, but also curiosity and exploration about yourself and your life. And are you in constant thinking about it? And let me not say constant, because again, this is not about oh my gosh, I'm always thinking about myself. It's a consistent. That's the better word, because consistent doesn't mean constant. Curiosity and exploration about yourself and your life, and writing things down so you have something to come back and connect to, right? Again, I go back to the compass versus the clock class, my workshop. It just helps with so much of this. If you have defined your due north, your compass, where are you in relation to it? At Best Today, we exist to help women just like you be your best one today at a time. So each week on the podcast, we are going to highlight your stories and your voices. So let's see what's in the inbox today. Today, we have a post coming from Leah in the Best Today community. Leah posted and shared Best Today Guide appreciation post. As I got the shipping notification for my next automatic subscription, Best Today Guide, I took a moment to reflect on how far I have come. I am currently on my 14th Best Today Guide. I have kept them all and today label each one by date to shelve in a newly organized space. I am truly not sure where I would be without the Best Today Guide. If you look at the dates, I have not been perfect, but that is not the point. I have been consistent. Not every page is filled out, but I kept at it and kept coming back. Often weekends were what I skipped, but that has improved too. I now have consistent routines that serve me well and provide grounding in my life even when things get hard. I have been good at the mornings for a while, and now the evenings are coming around too. I now understand the perfection of calling it a guide and not a planner. Life is a journey, and we cannot always plan for what comes our way, but we can always use a guide to keep us steady and focused on what matters, one today at a time. Well, Leah, you better go ahead and write my business copy for me. Thank you, because she nailed it, right? There is a reason it is called the Best Today Guide and not the Best Today Planner. And Leah articulates it so well. And if you're in the community, come on over and find that post, because she has a picture. It's so beautiful of all of her Best Today Guides stacked. 14 Best Today Guides. Wow. I celebrate you, reminding you that the Best Today Guides are 14 weeks long. So let's calculate that. I'm literally going to pull up my calculator right now. 14 times 14. That is 196 weeks. You have chosen yourself and intention. And like you said, consistency. So Leah, I celebrate you. We celebrate you. And if you want to find this beautiful rhythm that Leah has discovered that has now poured into her mornings and her evenings, I invite you to get started with the Best Today Guide, which you can do right now. And here's a little perk. Your order of the Best Today Guide gives you your first month in the Best Today community for free. So come on over. What are you waiting for? And join us. Order yours right now at besttoday.co. We'll also link the Best Today Guide directly right here in the show notes. And Leah, congratulations. I celebrate you. I see you. And thank you so much for sharing in the community and allowing me to share it with our podcast audience. Go get your Best Today Guide right now. It's linked right where you're listening to the podcast. Are you in the proper direction at all? You can avoid being complacent by understanding where you want to be going. And I imagine that's not complacency. And can you see yourself making progress toward that? Learn how to intentionally make plans and put them into action with small steps to move toward. Be content with your location. We talked about contentment, right? Briefly. Be content with your location, but not to the place where you've dug a hole and you're like, oh, I like it here. I'm just going to dig a hole for myself and sit here to avoid progress. Be content, because I can be very proud that I'm at 3. I am trying to get to 10, but I'm really grateful for the opportunity to make it to 3, because that means I've gone through 1 and 2. But I'm not going to say, oh, I made it to 3. 10 is so far away. I'm just going to dig a hole and sit here at 3. I'm okay with just staying at 3. And be clear, this isn't hey, everybody should be working toward all these things. This is more than anything is about a being, right? You know, there are ways for you to be a healthier version of yourself, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, any. And rather than working toward that, it's, well, this is kind of comfortable. I can just stay here, right? Get into community with people who will help you and hold you accountable. Because here's the thing, I don't want to be in any space that's not going to hold me accountable. Because where there's no accountability, there's no love, in my opinion. And so find your community like the Best Today community and come on over to the Best Today community, my community that's created for women. We will help you not only see those blind spots, but we'll make sure you don't fall within the cracks. But that requires you showing up, right? In the Best Today community, you have accountability and information to help you, like our workshop, the focus calls every month, the life class, the weekly encouragement talks with my Tuesday talks. Come there, surround yourself with people who can look at you and say, because I do this, I reach out to people in the community. There's the benefit of showing up, and I can say, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Let's talk about what's going on. Or, hey, these comments I'm seeing you make, you're being complacent. I actually hadn't used the word complacent. I describe it. I can see that you're making excuses while you can't do the thing I keep recommending you to do. You keep asking me and I keep recommending and you're not doing it and you make excuses for it. Let's talk about why that's happening, right? I see you in the community, right? That's what I love so much about it as well. So do with that what you will. Think about through some of those things I just shared with you about complacency. If you have a definition of complacency different from anything we've shared here, I'd love to hear it. Come share it over in the Best Today community. I asked the questions under the podcast tab in the community because I did sit with that for a while. I was like, what's the definition that felt right to me about complacency? And I love the combination of what I came up with like a unhealthy form of contentment, what Audrey said, and then what Stacy added on to that. That's what I have for you today. Thank you for the fantastic question. Come on over to the Best Today community. Let's continue to have this conversation. You can join the Best Today community by going to besttodaycommunity.com, clicking on the link right here in the show notes as well. Thank you for being present with me for this week's episode of the Best Today podcast. Please continue to leave reviews, share it with friends, and let us know your favorite parts and what questions that I can answer for you here on the podcast. You can email us at hello@besttoday.co or leave a message at besttoday.co/voice. You can also read and subscribe to my online publication for those on the journey, which we'll link here as well within the show notes. And I will talk to you on the next episode of the Best Today podcast. This podcast is provided for you every week by Best Today, where we are on a mission to help you to live and work well. We do this by creating resources that bring intention to how you plan, schedule, work, and live. You can get started in one of 3 easy ways. First, by taking our product quiz at besttoday.co/quiz. 2, joining us in our online community, the Best Today community, at besttoday.co/community. Or 3, connect with us through email at besttoday.co/email. all of which are linked below in the show notes. To learn more about our company and what we do, visit besttoday.co and join thousands of customers around the world pursuing a life of intention, one today at a time.